The recording has started.
Let's do this.
Many Bothans lost their lives, it's true, to bring the news across the galactic view. From the outer rim to the core sphere's light, tune in this week and hold on tight.
You're listening to episode 2 of Across the Network with guest Jeff Creasy. Our main segments this episode are community building, how does it relate to being a competitive player, and rogue deck strategies, how to identify when to use them, and how to be successful. Enjoy the show. All right, welcome to episode 2 of Across the Network. I'm Jonathan Fisher. I'm here with Lego Pizza. Welcome, Ian.
What up? Let's do this.
And we have brought today Jeff Creasy, another member of the Bothans Network. You might have seen him casting on some streams. You may have seen him in some top 8 results and winning some tournaments as well. So, a great player. He's got a lot to add here. You just heard that we're going to cover community building and rogue deck building, and Jeff's here to talk about those things. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. Really excited to go across the network on all this stuff. Let's dive in.
Yeah. So to kick things off, we have just a few things to talk about before we get into the segments that Jeff's here for. We have some upcoming events. Ian, you want to mention like some of the things that are coming up?
Yeah, so March is going to be pretty crazy. I don't know how many big competitive events are going to be happening at the start, like week 1 of the new set coming out, Jump to Lightspeed. But we do have the biggest tournament to date in competitive SWU, which is the Bothans Invitational Atlanta, which is happening March 28th, just 2 weeks after the new set comes out. I know all 3 of us are going to be there. I know, Frank and Blonde Sabine, who are hosting with Cards HQ, are super hyped about it. This event is going to be so much fun. There's a 3v3 tournament, a 6K main event, and then a 2K side event. All the top 8 is happening. It's going to be such a sweet event, and the biggest prize pool for a SWU event. And I think the most amount of people in a SWU event to date, because technically the 6K is going to have 256 people that can be in that tournament. So that's super exciting. Really excited for that. Have you guys been prepping for that? I don't know if you have any other major events before that, but I mean, most of my focus right now has been for that.
Oh yeah,
I'm prepping a lot for that, and for me, I'm only doing the 3v3, and then I'm commentating the 6K. So I'm prepping for that, but I'm also prepping for competitive events after that. But yeah, it's going to be basically the kickoff for set 4. It's going to be so hype. Just every competitive player for this game all in one place playing against each other right after a new set drops. It's awesome.
Yeah, some of the best players that have attended tournaments so far. We're still a new game, right? So the people that have gone to tournaments and won them, a lot of those people are showing up. If they're anywhere near the East Coast, they're coming for this. Like you said, highest cash payout to date for a Star Wars Unlimited tournament.
Yeah, it's not just the East Coast. We got people flying in from California, so this is going to be sweet. Yeah.
I think, and you're going to see both Jeff and I doing commentary throughout the event as well. So you'll see us again. Hope you like seeing us. And I think we're going to have, I believe it's around 20 Bothans, which is like 0.5% of all the Bothans on the team, but there's going to be a lot of us there. We'll be wearing these shirts. You'll see us. Come talk to us. We want to talk to you. We want to say hi and meet everybody.
Yeah, it's actually been really cool. All the PQs I went to this season, people have come up to me and told me that they heard my commentary and enjoyed it, or talked about the Bothans team and all that. It's really cool talking to people who just love the game.
It's also a little weird.
Yeah.
I've had people come
it is a little weird.
Yeah, they're like, I know who you are.
The first time someone that I didn't know came up to me, and I was like, this is a weird thing. Like, it's not something I'm used to, but it's really cool.
That's flattering, though.
The niche.
Yeah.
The niche internet micro celebrity status is the coolest thing ever, because it means nothing except for the people that know about it, and then it's just really cool for that little tiny interaction you have.
Yeah. So say hi.
has been
Say hi to us.
like the
I'm not
amount of
saying don't.
Yeah, no, everybody should always the whole team is like super approachable. It's one of the best parts about our team that I love is just like we're all a bunch of friendly people that love this game and want to talk and just whatever it is, your newest deck list, the latest spice, whatever. It's always fun to talk to people at events and have a good time.
And it's not just the Bothan Invitational.
But yeah, so
there's the Denver sector.
Yeah, so immediately after the Bothan Invitational on March 28th, we have the Denver sector. I think that's April 4th and 5th. And then it's basically just set 4 cycle going on. There's like multiple things happening in April, sectors, and then the regionals in May. So it's going to be crazy. But the Bothan Invitational and the Denver sector, at least in the U.S., are going to be super huge and pretty much going to set the tone for the meta. The Europeans, they have a sector as well. I think it's happening the same weekend as the Bothan Invitational, but they like to have 54 cards in their decks. I'm not super worried about their whatever they think the meta is going to be.
We love our Europeans, but we live here in East Coast US, so that's what we're going to cover. But yeah, so we
use the red 27 health base in Europe. Does that mean you get to go down to 50 cards?
Yeah, why not?
49, yeah.
Ooh, wow, that's pushing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're kind of in dark mode right now. We're brewing a lot. We're trying to figure out. We're working our best to break set 4 going into the Invitational. So you can expect in our podcast episodes after these major events, we'll be digging in to the decks that are emerging. And once a deck is public and it's showed up at a tournament, it's made a top 8. We're not going to be shy about digging into the main lines and getting into like the competitive content that we're hoping you'll come to our podcast for. So look forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. As anyone could expect, like we obviously are a competitive team, so we want to do the best that we can at these tournaments. And when a new set drops, that's when like you can really try to get an edge. Like we're going to talk about rogue decks in a second with Jeff, and I think that's the start of a set. Everything's rogue, right? Because it's a new meta. There's cards. Sometimes people don't know how to interact with those cards in the right way, especially in a game like SWU where there's like the action system. Like those little minutia, like one action you make can completely change how the whole game goes. And so having just that little bit of edge can be what sets you apart on a tournament. So we'll be dark for a bit, and then once tournaments start happening and stuff, everything's going to be open to talk about. But yeah, I'm also really excited for pre-release. That's happening next weekend.
Right.
Do you guys have any big pre-releases you're going to? I don't know what it's like in your areas.
There are so many pre-releases near me. I have multiple stores that do multiple pre-releases, and I try to get to at least 3 or 4 different stores worth of pre-releases for each set. So it's a whole thing. None of them are super competitive, and that I don't have any of the like win a box pre-releases or any of that. It's just a chance to see friends and hang out, mostly get to play with some of the new cards.
Yeah, almost the same for me. I'm gonna go to 1 pre-release that I know of. In some of the previous sets, I've gone to like 6 in a weekend. I know one of them, Chris Schutz and I were going to all the same pre-releases, so we were competing with each other for our overall record over the entire weekend. I think he beat me by 1. And I believe that's
fun.
I think that's only because I lost 1 match and he went undefeated. So he won that weekend. But yeah, I think this time I'm just doing 1. And it's going to be interesting as we prepare to like get the cards we need with Carbonite packs. I mean, is that changing things for you guys on how you're approaching getting the cards you want for this set?
A bit. So just real quick for pre-release stuff for me, I'm actually going to be flying down to Alabama and hanging out with Frank. So look out for some Blonde Sabine YouTube streams with me and them, maybe busting open Carbonite packs. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. But yeah, so Carbonite and just general like how I kind of look at get a card acquisition and things like that. Obviously, like pre-release is a great way to do that because you get like 6 packs or whatever it is, and then if you do well, you get more, so you can start building your collection that way. But I am kind of a whale for this game. I usually in cards I am not like this. I'll just buy singles. But I like this game too much, and I just always want to have every card available to me. So I buy like 2 cases of every set and just go crazy. I don't know if I'm going to be doing that going forward because of Carbonite, though, because
Right.
I also really want to get serialized cards and showcases, and Carbonite seemed to be the way to do it. So yeah, I might buy less of like the main set and just buy more Carbonites if I can get good deals on them.
My only problem with Carbonites versus the regular packs is you end up with just hundreds of foil commons and uncommons that you usually don't want to put in your competitive decks because they don't have the best they don't have the best flatness, but you still also need commons and uncommons for the set, so it makes it like a little awkward for me, and where I want to buy like a little bit of both because those prestige cards are gorgeous. But I also still need the commons and uncommons, like the meat and potatoes of the set.
Are all the serialized cards foil?
Yes.
Yeah, so the serialized cards should be texture foiled, and like
Okay.
it's not the normal foiling that's on every card. So I'm hoping that they're going to be a little bit flatter. Because
Yeah.
it would really suck if you open a serialized card and it curls. But
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My understanding is every prestige has 3 levels. There's a non-foil that's the lowest level, a foil that's the mid-level, and then serialized texture foil is the highest level. That's my understanding.
Okay. So as long as those don't curve, we'll be able to play them.
Yeah.
I know, like when you foil and you basically are like putting a metal sticker over the whole front of the card, then as soon as your like humidity is anything different from the factory where it was produced, it's gonna curl one way or another. As that expands and contracts. So
That's the way they do it now. They've made
Yeah.
black foils before. It's just more expensive, so they don't do it that way anymore. And that's just across card games.
that's good.
yeah,
That's good.
unless it's a double-sided card. Like the showcases, I think don't foil because it's on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so the regular foils
yeah,
from those packs probably not going to play. For me, I don't plan on getting any Carbonite packs, but what I love about it is it's going to flood the market with just regular hyperspace cards, which is that's my favorite kind of card to put in my deck. I don't want any foils. I don't want any curling to happen. I don't want to get called out during a tournament. But hyperspace cards, they look great. I do love having those in my deck, so I'm excited about that part.
Yeah, my financial prediction for this set is that the base tier prestige, the non-foil one, the hyperspace non-foils, and also showcases are all going to be cheaper for this set than they have been for any of the other ones. And that the prestige cards, the base level, are just going to be like dirt cheap for everything, except probably like one legendary.
yeah, could be. I'm interested to see how the market reacts. Because, I mean, I think Pascal Maynard, who recently won a PQ, he owns a store in Canada. And I guess because they had all of, like, the, people opening packs and stuff for the content stuff that FFG sent to the content creators, that some stores were able to, like, break the street date, too, and just show off, like, what you got. And so he opened, I think, 12 boxes of Carbonite, and he pulled 7 showcases and 2 serialized cards, which is pretty crazy.
It's also a lot of
who knows what the actual rate for the Carbonite boosters are for the serialized cards in Carbonite. I think it might be like 1 in every case since a case is 4, and he just got unlucky. But maybe it's 1 in, or I guess 2 in every 3 cases, but who knows?
Yeah.
I think those serialized cards, especially if you get like a Falcon or Fire Spray or like the Devastator or like something crazy, like those are going to go for a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which pulls a lot of the EV of the product into those cards, pushes down the price of just the regular cards that everybody needs to play the game. That part's good, as long as they have a model that keeps the game going. So that's what we want. Keep this game going. Stay successful, FFG. That's what we want from you guys.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I mean, in
Solid
that
segue, keeping the game going.
look, I did that on purpose. Come on, man.
I got you. I'm just here to help.
In that vein, keeping the game going, community building is a big part of it, and we, this podcast we are focused on the competitive player. If you're listening to this, we assume it's because you're somebody that's interested in winning tournaments. And that we're bringing content that's interesting to you as that kind of person. So in terms of community building, how does that play in to people that want to be competitive and win tournaments? Should they even care about this?
I think it is incredibly important. I think it is incredibly important because this is a small game. If you look at the Gathering, the competitive teams don't have their own communities. There's no Channel Fireball competitive team Discord where the community talks to the players and gets their input on decks and everything. That doesn't exist in the big games because it doesn't need to. But in our game, it absolutely needs to happen because, in my opinion, what we need multiple separate places for competitive people to be able to talk and share ideas, where you can avoid being in a single echo chamber. You can avoid a lack of creativity from everyone going to the exact same place, whether it's just you and your friends being competitive locally, or you're in, the one online community that exists for competitive people. You need the ability to have multiple spaces and multiple people talking about the game. And I think that if you are a competitive player right now, it's in your best interest to make sure that these communities get built. Because if we don't have enough of a player base, we're not going to have these big tournaments that competitive players can go win. If we didn't have enough people to fill up the Bothan Invitational, we wouldn't be having a 6K tournament. But the fact that, we exist, KTOD, Late Night, McClunky, like all these different places exist where people can go and talk about Star Wars, you get a lot of these differing ideas, and it all helps grow the competitive community for this game.
For sure. So speaking of like just all these different places to be, I'm in probably every single one of them, or at least most of the ones that I'm aware of. And my buddy was like looking over my shoulder at my computer when I had Discord up, and he just goes, "Dude, like, how many SWU Discords are you in?" And I'm just like, "Don't worry about it. It's fine. I don't have a problem."
Yeah, I had to group mine together so that I can like collapse the tab if I need to for Discord.
Yeah, I think I'm at like 15 at this point. It's pretty crazy. A lot of them are like local area. Like I have one for like DMV, which is DC, Maryland, Virginia. Like I'm in the SWU Discord for that. Mm-hmm. I'm in like one for New Jersey. I'm in all like the big team ones. Like there's so many awesome resources and ways to just talk to different people who are like-minded. Even the general SWU Discord, the like 10,000 plus person one, like the deck threads there can get pretty outlandish and crazy, and not everybody there is a good sport, but overall it's still like a fine place to at least go to find the other pockets that you're more interested in. Like if you're just like want to be super focused on like Twin Suns or something, like you can probably find Twin Suns stuff in that big Discord that will lead you to a Discord like the Bucketheads, where you can just find like super niche like things that you're interested in. And I think that's one of the great things about SWU right now is that all these different competitive places have a little home that you can kind of hang out in. Like I really appreciate everything that the KTOD team does with their Discord. Like they have a bunch of deck threads that is really awesome to hang out in. They're like even just their general chat, whenever there's big news that happens, that thing's flying off at like 20 messages a second, people going crazy during like a live stream that FFG is doing where they announce something. In our own Discord, in the Bothan Network Discord, which you can join, the link is in the description, is also popping at all times. So yeah, it's just so cool, and it's nice to have, especially in like the digital that we're at, even though this isn't a digital game, being able to like hang out across the digital space to connect with people from Europe or whatever and get their take on how the game's going and stuff like that. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're a competitive player, there's like two questions that come to mind for me is where should I participate so that I can benefit from these communities as a competitive player? And then where should I, if at all, participate to help grow that community? To say like I think I'm very good at this deck. I've played it a lot. I've won some tournaments. Should I get involved in some way? Should I share with the community? And I think there's places for both of those things. KTOD does a great job of providing deck forums in a space that has a low barrier of entry, but that low barrier of entry, subscribing to KTOD, is enough to just say, look, if you're here, it's because you want to be here. You want to talk about these decks. You want to try to get better. And it's not expensive to subscribe to them, but it's enough to just kind of keep a community that's really focused.
Yeah, weed out the trolls too.
Right.
Or just make the trolls pay you. Either one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to me, all the different places kind of have their own vibe. So if you're a competitive player looking for a place to go, I would say just poke your head in and try out a bunch of different places. Find the people that you vibe with. Find the people talking about the decks that you want to talk about. There are a lot of options right now, and I think everybody's trying to. Everybody's still at the point where they're trying to figure out exactly how they want their setup to work. Like people are getting into a rhythm now that before.
Yeah, I think the regional ones are really important too. If you're like, let's say you like move to a new state and you're trying to like get involved with like the local scene, it will be probably hard for you to figure out like which stores are running events and like who gets the PQs and all this stuff, right? So if you're a competitive player and don't really know anything about your region that you're in, like whatever state you're in the US, I'm sure that there's a Discord for it. Like there's a Florida one, the New Jersey one, there's a like Northeast one, there's the DMV one that I talked about earlier. I'm sure there's a Colorado one that Jeff could speak of.
There's an Atlanta one. Yep.
There's an Atlanta one. So that I think is one of the best resources, especially if you're interested in going to the competitive events, because those are going to pop off when they, PQs are announced for that area, or if the SEG events are coming to your area, whatever it might be, right? Like those Discords are going to know all the information. It's going to be like pretty easy for you to figure out what kind of information that you'll need to like register for the events and all that stuff.
Yeah. Also, like if you're a competitive player and you want that, just make your own community. Like, there's a Colorado Discord, and then shout out to the Colorado Cantina crew who like they just were a group of competitive players in Colorado, and they said, hey, we want to test together. We want to together. And now they have multiple day 2 buys to Worlds. They've got a 3v3 team for Beatle, and they're coming down for that. So like just start your own if you want to. If you're trying to get a team and get testing together and take the game seriously, nothing's stopping you from doing that. You can go other places, or you can just go to the people that you see at your LGS and just start taking the game more seriously with them. Because to me, being a competitive player isn't about just playing. It's about playing with the intent of getting better, which usually means playing with people where you're okay, talking through the lines that you're doing, talking through your deck choices. And whether you do that with random people online in a Discord, or whether you do it with the people you play with at your LGS, like you have to forcibly try to make yourself better. Just going to weeklies every week and going to showdowns or whatever, that's not going to make you a better player. You have to do that with the intent of trying to get better and understanding which lines are working and which ones aren't, which cards are working and which ones aren't, and having discussions with other like-minded people about that to me really helps kind of solidify that aspect and help you actually improve at the game.
And Jeff, about this, I think also getting involved in like commentary, tournament commentary, streaming, doing a podcast. I don't know who does that. putting yourself
I'm
out
gonna do
there
a
like
podcast in
that,
2025.
these things force you to say, okay, I'm gonna be saying something that a bunch of people are gonna listen to, or I've got people
Yeah.
tuning in right now. Puts a different
Yeah,
kind
doing
of
commentary
like
has really
pressure on
made me
you.
think critically about different lines that people can take. It's been really cool.
Right. So like we've had people in our Discord give presentations on decks. Like Junior and one of his friends did, I think it was 5 hours on Han.
A long
It
one,
was
yeah.
Yeah.
it was
Han-
long enough that
Yeah.
it was during the workday, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that sucks. I can't make it." And then my workday ended, and they were still going, and I
Yeah.
was like, "What is going on?"
It's like they did 5 entirely different shows, all about Mono Han. They just spent the whole day giving their presentation, and it was amazing. So like you don't need to be part of a team or be like plugged. You can just put yourself out there and say, hey,
Yep.
I know a lot about this deck, and I'd love to talk about it. Does anybody want to give me a platform? And us, for example, we absolutely would, and I know KTOD would, and I know others would. You just got to reach out and ask for it.
Yeah, that's a good
Definitely.
point. I think especially early on in like this game existence, like people are way more open to collaboration and stuff than any other game I've ever seen. Just because, like, rising tides raise all boats, right? Like
That's what Loopy says.
everybody wants
Yeah.
to be able to like do the cool thing and help each other out and collaborate. And I think that's one of the reasons that the Bothan Invitational was such a immediate hit from all the competitive players who wanted to like join and play, especially that 3v3 tournament, because one, nothing like that has been done before, but two, it was an opportunity for us to like invite every single player in the US that we knew was, either had a PT or PQ invite or had won like done a Gen Con winner or like was a SCG winner, and just get all of them in the same place. And every single major content team or content creator or competitive team we tried to invite. So I think that just shows that the willingness of the different competitive teams to want to just do cool things and be accepting of other competitive teams. Like it's not some cutthroat rivalry. It's all friendly rivalries. We're all just trying to do our best to win, but also like have fun doing it. And that's what the community part's really about. It's the fun part.
And it's also cutthroat. That's why it's so fun. When we if I do face Tata, Wu, and Alex because I'm in their bracket, we're gonna try so hard to beat them. Are we gonna win? I don't know, but we're gonna try so hard.
Well, the biggest thing for me in this game, honestly, in like every aspect of my life, something being competitive or something that I care about doesn't equate to me being unfriendly about it. Like those are two completely separate things to me. And I've talked a lot to people while both beating them and being beaten by them at PQs, and still had friendly conversation. And same thing with people from other teams.
There is some table etiquette.
Yeah.
When you win a match,
I agree.
When you win a match, give that person their space if they want it. But I've had great conversations after both winning and losing matches with people that were interested in having those conversations. And
for sure.
I mean, I find if you interact with the community and get involved with people, you're also going to run into a lot of new ideas that you haven't thought of. Like you might come up with ideas that serve the foundation for like a new deck, for example.
Yeah, for sure. I know. So sometimes it can get to you when you lose in a tight spot or you're like playing for your winning in. But usually like everybody's super cool about it and loves to talk about like what like, oh, maybe if I did this, like it would have been different or whatever. But I did have in my last PQ, which I'm not proud of, I got super upset when I lost my I got my second loss, and it was against the Sabine player. And the only out he had was top decking a 4-cause I believe in, and he top decks it, and of course he and kills me. And immediately after he does that, he goes, "Oh wow, yeah," and that was the only one left in my deck. And I was just like, "You didn't have to tell me that.
What can you do? What can you do?"
You didn't have to tell me that."
Yeah. One thing I will say is after the game, do not, under any circumstances, tell the person that you just beat what they did wrong.
Oh yeah, I
That
agree with
is
that for sure.
If they ask you, then you can tentatively. But that is the worst thing I've ever seen. And I've seen all kinds of people do it, and they say it with the best intentions, like, "Oh, what if you had done this or that?" Just don't do it. Like, right after someone lost is not the time to try to explain to them why they lost. So that's just a PSA to everyone out there. If you want more cordial interactions, don't do that.
Yeah, I think we've all been on the receiving end of that one at least once. So
Yeah.
I feel you on that.
Yeah. Just
Unless
see
it's
if they wanna
Alex,
talk.
then I'll do that to him.
Oh yeah.
He'll talk about it during the match.
Yeah.
Like,
anybody has
I'm not
seen
sure
me
you
now-
should have done that, man. Are you sure?
You verbally.
SCG Atlanta, it was either the 2K on Saturday or the 1K on Sunday. I've never been more distracted in a game than when I was at the table beside Ian playing Alex in the Swiss, and they were just the entire time they were just cussing each other out about how stupid their other deck decisions were, and this move was wrong and that move was wrong. I could not stop laughing when I was trying to play my game right beside them. It was the best.
It's good they did not have player mics for that match.
Yeah.
We tried to for the finals. We were like, you guys should just put mics on us, live mic us.
Yeah,
It'll be
I
fun.
told him the most just don't worry about casters. Just give them mics and go and see what happens. Let the magic happen.
maybe with a 10-second delay and my finger on the button.
I think you'll need it for Alex more than me. All right, just
Yeah. I know. We interviewed Alex after that. He hit his 3 F-bombs that are allowed.
I think it took him 4
Pretty
words.
quickly. Yeah, he got right there.
Alex, we love you. We're just teasing you a little bit.
So, let's get into our next topic. Like, as people, I tried to transition us earlier, but it failed. As people go into tournaments, they're looking at the meta, they're looking at the top decks, and it can be risky just showing up with a known deck that everybody's prepared for. So, like, what are some of the things that somebody can do? How can we talk about rogue decks here?
Yeah, so I think it's important to differentiate. There are kind of 2 phases, right? There's new set phase. Like for set 4, I would argue that for set 4, it's hard to call anything a rogue deck right now because there haven't been any big events. There are no decks with results to establish the meta. There are decks that everyone thinks are going to be the meta or think this is the best deck and this is a contender or whatever. But until you get competitive event results, you don't really know. So the second phase is, you have an established meta and a deck comes in and disrupts that. And those are the rogue decks that I really like. And they're kind of twofold. When I did Magic, I didn't play it overly competitively. It was just kind of like a side hobby that I did after my job. And, I wasn't on a team, but I had some friends and every now and then we traveled to Grand Prix and stuff. But I was of the opinion at the time, I said, I don't want to play the best deck because I'm not going to be the best player at this event. So I don't want to be playing the deck that is practiced against, and they've practiced against it for better players than me. That was like my mindset, 10 years ago when I was doing stuff like that. Now I think of it in a little bit of a different light, where I still love rogue decks or rogue cards in decks, and I think of it more like taking the fight into my arena, where I've done the practice against the good decks and understand the lines, and it's highly likely that the person that I'm playing against hasn't necessarily had to deal with this before. They might not have the right sideboard choices. They might not have the right cards in place or understand the exact play lines that I'm trying to do. I liken it to, if you look at very high level, like professional chess right now, it's not chess at the highest level, I would argue, isn't about problem solving. It's about pattern memorization and recognition from matches and from computer simulations and everything that have gone on through the decades now. And if you look at someone like Magnus Carlsen, one of the most prolific chess players to ever live, one of the things that he does in his high-level chess matches is he takes an opening and intentionally messes it up. He makes an intentionally suboptimal play because now his opponent can no longer say, hey, I'm in this exact game from 30 years ago and we know exactly the right lines to take. He puts his opponent in problem solving mode and outside of pattern recognition mode. And I think the same strategy can apply to trading card games, where you say, okay, I'm taking you off of the line where you know that this is Sabine Green versus Boba Green and you want to do this and that. And I think taking people out of their comfort zone, especially in a high stress situation like a competitive event, can have a huge advantage if you're prepared for it. The hard part is finding the competitive rogue decks and rogue cards that aren't in the big decks, but you think will combat the big decks and do well with certain interactions against other people and against other decks.
Okay, let's take a step back. So, I heard you mention different phases. So when a set comes out, there's undiscovered decks, but because there's new leaders, there's all these new game pieces. So we're not necessarily in rogue territory at that point. It seems like there's a lot of flavor of rogue where your opponent isn't quite ready for what you're presenting, the problems you're putting in front of them. And then there's like mid-season when the meta is established, how you mix things up and disrupt your opponent's analysis of what main lines you're going for.
Yeah, I think I can give 2 examples of those things too. So for the new meta one, I think a really good example of that is the Anakin Blue deck that Jeff made and I piloted to SCG Columbus at the beginning of set 3. That deck was... I think people realized, especially if they played limited, that Anakin's ability was really powerful and that his unit side could hit like a truck. And I think a lot of people thought maybe it should just be like an Anakin ECL deck or maybe a yellow deck so you can use Surprise Strike and really hit hard. And I don't think a lot of people had thought about putting it in a blue hero shell. And Jeff had made a really cool version of the deck that utilized the ability to restore, to negate the damage that you dealt yourself against aggressive decks so that you could always like manipulate your life total and then use Anakin as a finisher along the side of cards like Luke and Jedi Lightsaber to just take over a game. And we had already kind of known that Django was going to be a huge deck and Han was going to be a really big deck and played a lot at that event. So the cards that we put in the deck were specifically pointed to interact with those 2 leaders, specifically playing a full copy of Perilous Position and Razor Crest to get your Perilous Position back so that you could continue to like take out the 3/2 units that Django would put out, or that you could keep tapping Han, and just have really good interactions against those decks that you thought were going to be at the top of the meta for that event. And then kind of put on the back of a lot of these people, even the good players, might not know how to interact with your leader in a way, so they might make suboptimal plays. So an example of that could be that they smuggle a tech out while you have a Sabine out. You have the option of being able to use the Anakin ability to attack for 5, where normally a blue-red hero deck doesn't have access to those kind of damage pumps with an attack all in one. So those type of interactions can kind of come at you fast when you're live playing in a competitive tournament and you haven't practiced against it before. Yeah. And that's kind of where like the rogue element comes in, where it's less about that, no one knew that Anakin existed or anything like that, or that Anakin could be competitive. It just might be you didn't realize that in this specific color combination that a leader could interact in a certain way. And then
like rogue synergies basically is what I would call it.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
How Restore synergized with Anakin, or how the reason that I initially made that deck was like you were saying about Restore, and then also the -2/-2 from Jedi Lightsaber with Anakin having Overwhelm. Like that was another synergy that I wanted to explore when I made the deck. So like looking for things like that when you have a new set, like okay, what new leader goes with some new card or some old card, or what kind of combinations can we make here to just have some cool interactions, and then once you find the interactions that work really well, try to build a deck around those that utilizes them.
I like the chess analogy. for a lot of reasons with Star Wars Unlimited in general. There's a lot of great chess analogies, but just because I like to think of Rogue in terms of defining what Rogue is as just divergence from, the common main lines, things that they've practiced against, they've practiced themselves, they're aware of, they know that these are the main lines, and they even know like some of the options, not the main line, but other things you could go down in these decks. And when you completely diverge from those main lines, like Magnus, like you're talking about, you put your opponent completely out of their comfort zone into space that they have not put pre-thought into. They don't have any instinctual plan for that. They don't have any rote memory related to what do I do next. And as a regional governor player, I can tell you that when I'm sitting across from someone that's doing things like that, I'm sideboarding them out in game 2 and then sideboarding them back in game 3 once I figured out what the heck this person's up to.
Yeah. Yeah, the hard part is finding the cards that people haven't tested against or accounted for that are also good enough to beat the meta decks and the good games. That's the tricky part. I mean, those synergies absolutely exist. I think there's, even with as small a card pool as we have, there are a lot of synergies that have gone underexplored throughout like the first 3 sets of this game, in my opinion. So yeah, they exist. It's just about finding them and finding the right shell to put them in and the right supporting cast to go around them.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so outside of just like the beginning of a set, with the example of Anakin Blue, another good one was, when you have an established meta, and we're going into like, okay, how do we, break the mirror match, or how do we, find that one interaction that could set us apart in the meta. I think a good example of that was my 2 PQ wins that I won back to back with Han Green. So obviously most people know me as playing Mono Han, and I was doing that at the beginning of this set as well, once the PQ started, and I got a top 4, and my top 4 was 4 Mono Hans, and I ended up losing, and thought really hard about it going into the next week when I knew I had another PQ, and I was just like, I really don't, if this is what the meta is going to be like, all Mono Han, I really don't want to play these mirror matches, because in my opinion they didn't feel like there was a lot of skill expression, and it kind of was like who has initiative, who drew more Cunnings, who drew more like 7-drop bombs, things like that. And so I tried to find a meta breaker, and it just so happened that at the same time, a bunch of people at the Bothans Network were working on a Han Green list that really intrigued me, and I thought that if you just resupply on turn 1 using Han's ability, you could basically do the same that Mono Han's doing in the mirror, except you're doing it a turn earlier. So you can't get blown out by the same type of things where if you had initiative, you could hotshot blaster your Han into their Han before their Han gets to attack, so they never get to 7. Like, you could now do that as the other Han player as Han Green, but you get to do like your U-Wing turn a whole turn earlier and really blow out the Mono Han decks in that mirror match, and that was super successful for me. I ended up winning 2 PQs in a row.
U-Wing's a hell of a card.
Yeah, and just finding those like
4 resources, also really good.
Yeah, and just finding those niche little things that could like maybe get you an edge during the middle of a season when like everything else you've tried, you keep hitting a roadblock. Mm-hmm. Like those type of innovations are sometimes even the most fun to figure out too. Like It was really fun working on that deck with Chris Schutz and Mickey and Jeff yourself. I think we're working on it. There was like 5 or 6 people like one week where we all just like there was like 12 versions of this deck going around. We were really nailing down
we locked ourselves in a voice channel and we're just like, all right, what about this? What about that? Like I took to a 1K. I'd done like 2 reps on Han the whole set and took Han Green to a 1K main decking an overwhelming barrage and top 8'd. It was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's just like those little things when you find it and you've like honed in on it and no one's expecting it, like that's when you spike those events and really find that like difference maker, which is really fun. And I think it's you should never look at it because, like, people will always say, like, oh, you should just play the best deck, know the best deck, play it to the best, and you'll have the most success. And while that can be true, there is merit in trying to find the edge in something that might be off meta or might be like from meta past, right? Like Han Green was a deck that existed before. It just wasn't really a player in the meta at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And, bring something back and just trying to like fight in a different way is going to throw people off guard.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Just like patterns of when to invest time into rogue decks versus invest time into the meta decks, the mainline decks. How do you split your time between those two things?
To me, I always start with what do people think is the best deck, because usually I'll either play that or watch games of people playing it. I want to see how the deck ticks, what makes it a good deck. Is it looking set 3 Django, was it okay? So how powerful is this triple Dark Raid into Ruthless Raider? What's the follow-up? How likely is it to hit? Looking at things like now there are 2 of them decks. Like, okay, what are you going for? How does your deck function when it doesn't do the main thing it's trying to do? What's your backup plan? I try to look at all of those aspects of a deck and kind of use that to. I try to fairly quickly determine if a deck is for me or not, because one of the things about this game is that there are so many different play styles around there. Sometimes you play a deck and you're just like, this deck, I can see that it's strong. I don't want to play it. I don't think it's for me. I don't think it's going to win long term. And then you say, okay, if I think everyone is going to be playing this, what beats it? And is that something that I like playing? And does what beats it have game into the other decks? Because you can't just say deck A beats deck B, so I'm going to take deck A, because there's going to be more than 2 decks at every event.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you don't want to get into like that rock, paper, scissors scenario.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like, okay, well, I can play a deck that beats rock, but I know I'm going to lose to scissors every single time. Then is it worth it to try to figure out, okay, well, how do I make that scissors matchup less bad? Sometimes it is, but like sometimes it's just innately the way decks like interact with each other. Like a good example of that would be just Bosk Blue versus Mono Han. The way that Mono Han interacts with the Bosk Blue deck, there's not much that Bosk Blue deck can do really. Like they can play in trenches, they can play more takedowns or wait like force chokes to be able to deal with the DJ tech interaction. But at the end of the day, the Han deck has like a million discard spells or discard events, and they'll be able to figure out a way to get around whatever tech cards you brought in, and you might you might make it go from like a 90-10 matchup to an 80-20 matchup, but you're still losing 20 or still losing 80% of the time. So is that really worthwhile to invest in? That's kind of where you need to figure out, like, maybe it's not a rogue meta in that, like, or a rogue deck in a meta in that way, where you're trying to make a deck better into a certain matchup that's really bad. It might just be like, okay, let's take a deck that has like an okay matchup into a lot of different things and no real bad matchups, and then try to figure out a way to beat the main like boogeyman of the format, right? I know a lot of people did that in set 2 with Boba. Like they would just play a deck that was good into Boba Green, if that existed. I doubt it. But that was one of the goals, and like that's like a way that if you can actually solve that problem, it's probably worthwhile for you to invest that time and try to make that deck work.
Yeah, the hardest part about making a rogue deck work to me is that when you see an established deck, take Mono Han at the end of set 3 as an example. Everyone knew it existed. Everyone knew the lines into all these matchups. So it was easy to take that deck and add rogue cards to it. So you're not making a rogue deck, but you're still altering decision making. Look at George Hudson's PQ win with jetpacks and Mono Han. He was the first person that I had seen add jetpack into Mono Han, and he did it with a lot of success. And when you're doing something like that, I think it's a lot easier to find rogue cards to add to established decks, because then you can modify certain matchups drastically, but you don't have to go and redo all of the testing to say, okay, how does this deck do into Sabine? How does it do into Django? Because you already know most of those matchups if you know that deck, and then you know the deck well enough to say, well, I really like this one interaction of how Jetpack handles the mirror and lets my Han live, or how it handles, whatever the situation may be. And you say, okay, now I just need to test these rogue cards and think about how this 2 to 3 card mix up changes all of these matchups. What's it good in? What's it bad in? When do I want it? And decide whether it's main deck or sideboard. Yeah. And I think that's a really effective way if you don't have the ability to test, 30 plus hours a week of of different meta matchups. You can just take those decks and add rogue cards, and you still get to make it your own. You still get to have really cool interactions, and you don't have to you don't have to reinvent the wheel with, okay, how does this test into every single deck that's out there.
I think that plays well into your Magnus analogy, where you're playing a main line. You're playing the main line. You're playing Mono Han. That's the main line. Yeah. But you diverge from the main line as soon as you hit the table with that jetpack, and your opponent's like,
"Yeah, exactly."
I thought I knew what was happening.
I'm ready
here.
I'm ready to ambush my Han into your Han, and you say, "Well, I play this jetpack." And you're like, "All right, I'm no longer ready."
It has a shield for the turn. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh. And George in particular.
The last set. Yeah, I was gonna say the last set 3 PQ I went to. I was playing Han Green. I was playing against Vader Green. And I was sitting here, and it's not a matchup I tested a ton because it's still a bit of a fringe deck, but mostly what they're going to try to do. And I'm sitting here, and then they deployed Vader, and I'm like, okay, I have to do this and this. And I attacked with something, and then I said, all right, Grievous is wheel bike on Vader, and I said that I was not ready for that. Give me a second. Gotta reset the brain, think about what I'm seeing here, and I'm gonna deal with this.
When I scoop my cards up and say, let's go to game 2.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Another story about George, and I think this is another example of what you can do with rogue decking. We've talked about diverging from main line. We've talked about targeting the mirror breaker with the Han Green story. Something that George did in set 1 is he looked at the meta and he said, okay, nobody has a good answer to Avenger. Avenger's a really strong card right now. If I can stick it on the table, most decks just die to it. And he looked at Entrench and said, oh, Entrench answers anything. And then if I super laser blast, I don't care that there was an entrenched unit. It's gone along with everything else that I just swept away. And they looked at Vader and said, well, Vader, he flips really late, and I can flip him after a laser blast, and he's a really big threat, and I can Avenger after a laser blast. And him and Guy and maybe some others, I know those two worked on it, worked on this deck, and they spiked a 5K at the time, I think it was, by just exploiting the metagame. Yeah, by saying the current meta does not handle these play lines. I'm going to build a deck that optimizes for these play lines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's some of the funnest stories that you get to make in this game too, right? Where it's when those things pan out and you actually did exactly call the way the meta would react and how you could be a thorn in that side of those top decks. It's really awesome to see it pan out, and what I'm really looking forward to is seeing in the Bothan Invitational, what decks do we not expect to show up that do show up and have success, because no one ended up testing Akbar Yellow or something, right? And then it just goes and spikes the event.
Ian, calm down.
That one specifically for Jeff, because I know that he loves Akbar.
Yeah, I have tested Akbar Yellow. I was gonna play it cool, I haven't tested it because we're in dark mode here. But yeah, I think another general tip for anyone trying to be competitive with rogue decks and rogue cards is the key is you want to find good cards that come together to be great. You don't want to find synergies that turn bad cards good. You want to find synergies that turn good cards great. The one exception in this game is if a card is bad except with your leader, because you always have your leader. So that's where this differs from other games a little bit. We can say, oh, the way this one card interacts with, with Luke leader from set 1, that's really cool. And we can build a synergy around this because you're always going to have that leader. But you don't want to have 2 bad cards that do nothing in your main deck that are good together, because most of the time you're just going to draw them separately and they'll be bad cards.
Yeah, I think Kazuda is actually a really interesting leader that will have that effect a lot because of how unique his ability is.
Yeah.
Like he literally takes a card that kills itself and turns it into a card that doesn't kill itself, which is, taking a bad card to be good. But then he also takes good cards and makes them great, like Falcon, right? Like he can take the Falcon, which even, Blonde Sabine of set past would play it despite having the tax every turn. And now he gets to do that without the tax. So he gets to make good cards great and bad cards good.
I'm looking forward
but also
to
since he's your leader, you always have the opportunity. Like if Kazuda was a card in your main deck, and you said, okay, I have to draw that. Like if he was that villain card that said, if that was the only way you could make units lose abilities, no unit with negative abilities would be considered, because you'd have to draw these 2 bad cards together. But the fact that he's your leader and you say, okay, I always have access to this, it lets you it lets you build these synergies that are very leader specific, which is a really cool thing that I like about this game that you don't get out of a lot of other games.
Yeah, agreed. What were you trying to say, Jonathan?
I was going to say, I'm going to be really excited for you to have like 5 of those really bad cards in your hand and realize you can only activate that leader once per turn. Like, oh no, I can only use one of these bad cards.
Yeah, no, that and that's the cool part about deck building. And like, you could have this awesome strategy lined up when you deck build, and then you go to test and you're like, this belongs in the trash can.
Yeah,
that happened a few times. I am very much a tinkerer. I think I've already made upwards of 30 set 4 decks. Just like a 2-card combination pops in my head, and I'm like, I'm gonna make a deck around this, and then I'll just play it against myself on unnamed digital platforms, and just like, all right, do these lines feel good? Do I need to keep going down this path to see if there's a deck here? Or is the reason I wanted to make this deck bad in the first place?
Yep. Yeah, good points.
All right. Well, hey, good show. Great show. Jeff, thanks for joining us. Anything else to add before we talk about what shows are coming up next?
No, I don't think so. I think we pretty thoroughly covered rogue decks. It's a really fun topic. If anybody wants to chat more about it, just hit me up. I'm around in Discords and stuff. I love talking about rogue decks and rogue cards. I'm a tinkerer at heart. Oftentimes too much so. It's one of the things that I like to do is either take a meta deck and figure out how to beat it, or take a deck and figure out a couple of like cool additions to make certain matchups better. It's just one of the things I really like about TCGs in general.
I think I'm pretty fair in terms of your specific tinkering methods, because you will do something and I'll be like, that's awesome, it's busted, can I play it at my next tournament? Or I'll be like, please don't try to put more effort into this, you're wasting your time.
I believe you told me, multiple people yelled at me about putting Razor Crest in Anakin Blue. I will say that.
That was probably the first person. I was like, this card is unplayable.
I love it. I was there for you all the way. So for our next podcast, we got the next few lined up. In terms of our schedule, I'm trying to put gaps behind major events. So when there's like a sector or regionals, like something big coming up, our 10K invitational, I'm not going to have guests scheduled for those slots, because we're going to try to bring to you somebody that did really well at that tournament. We're hoping that every single time it's a Bothan. But it might not be. When we say across the network, we don't just mean Bothan Network. We want to network with everybody. So we're going to try to reach out to those folks and bring you some people that did really well that are interested in joining the podcast. But over the next few weeks, we've got this gap where Set Force coming out. We're going to talk about some interesting things that we hope are something you want to talk about as a competitive player. So on March 12th, we've got George Hudson. Going to be on the show. You may have heard of him. He's going to talk about deck building tactics and strategies for new sets. So very in the moment, right? So we've got a new set coming out. We're going to talk about how do you approach that? What kinds of things are you thinking about? We might introduce talk about hypergeometric calculators a bit, or some other math tools, and just kind of talk about those a little bit with you. Make sure to introduce them, and then talk about how George uses them throughout his process. March 19th, we're going to bring on Michael Carlock, one of the original members of Bothan Network, one of the founders, and we're going to talk about just the origins of the Bothan Network, some of the stories there, and try to hook into what you might need to know as a listener to grow your own testing group, to take it to the next level. What have we done to create the Bothan Network, and how could you use some of those same strategies in your testing group? And then on March 26th, we're going to have Frank Myers here to talk about the Bothan Invitational that comes up that very next weekend. So we'll be covering, what to expect, any information for people that are wanting to attend or wanting to view externally. What could you expect to come out of this Bothan Invitational for you as a viewer and a participant. So hopefully those shows are exciting for anyone that's still here listening. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I love George. I can't wait to watch that one. I was actually going to make a joke about making sure to get your calculators out, and then you already said it, because I highly recommend people pay attention to the math and statistics side of this. It's huge for deck consistency that George is going to bring. As someone who loves ramping, I'm going to say that George and I disagree on that particular front, and we'll see if he brings that up. But yeah. I love ramping in every game I can do it in, because I love playing big cards before I die. It's nice. But yeah, no, I all those guests sound awesome. And yeah, it's like, I like the variety of content in there as well.
Yeah, we're hoping to be able to build some cool shows for different parts of the competitive mind, and ways that like every player at every level who's interested in like being a better competitive player will be able to get something out of. And having different people come on with different thoughts and strategies of how they prepare or build decks or organize into testing groups and various things, I think is going to be super helpful for anybody who's listening and wanting to grow as a player.
I'm going to make a bold statement.
Oh, go ahead.
And I know I feel confident George is going to go over this in his episode, but if you want to be a competitive player at this game, don't think about something like, a few percentage points lower of chance of having a turn one play is okay, because it's not. And I think he's going to get into the reasons why it's not. But when you like look at those statistics averaged out over a whole event, and the odds of that you're just going to automatically lose a game, like that's the kind of math stuff that is super interesting for me in deck building. When you look at not just turn one plays, that's the obvious one, like that's a super easy one to calculate, but all that kind of deck synergy stuff, it's really cool to dig into the math. I'm super looking forward to that episode.
Yeah, it's gonna be sweet.
Maybe it'll be our first 2-hour episode, who knows. But anybody still here, if you're watching on YouTube, we are on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, we are on YouTube. So I've noticed that Spotify listeners are way more likely to listen to the whole show. So maybe that's a good strategy for something like this. But yeah, if you're on one of those platforms, just want you to know we're also on the other. But other than that, I think we're done. Everyone have a great night.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me again, guys. This has been a ton of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. If anybody has comments and suggestions about who we should interview, who we should talk about, what topics we should bring up, hit us up in the comments, subscribe, put on notifications, do all the things that YouTube says you're supposed to do.
You do not have to be a Bothan
the algorithm overlords.
That's true.
Thanks, everyone.
Very true.
Goodbye.